Welcome back to Heaving Bosoms, the podcast where two best friends recap romance novels while squeeing over two Dexters finding their HEA.
Gonna love what we love, do it out loud. Stack our shelves with the clinches out. Shout it from the rooftop, can you hear the sound? Yeah. Live your best life, love it out loud. Love it out loud.
Hey HBs! I hope you're ready for a dark rom-com. This was a subgenre I didn't quite know I needed so badly, and that feels like just a lack of self-reflection, because it really melds so many of my favorite things together. Before we jump in, this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we are doing a Patreon watch party, and we are watching Magic Mike XXL. If you are a longtime listener, you know that I'm taking a big risk here because Magic Mike XXL is the movie that got me pregnant with my second. So I just need to reassure you that I've been really careful with my birth control in preparation. Gotta be safe. You can find all of the details of the event on our Patreon page by visiting patreon.com/Heaving Bosoms podcast. We've done a bit of a refresh over there, and there's now a $5 tier that gets you access to all of the live events. All right, let's get into part 1 of Butcher and Blackbird by Brynn Weaver. Here we go. Oh, hey, Sabrina.
Well, hello, Melody.
I hope that you are ready for our TikTok algorithm to change a bit.
Okay.
Boy, have I gone down a genital piercing rabbit hole.
Was it because of the fourchette and
Yeah.
the labial piercings? Okay.
Yeah. And the clit piercing, too. Yeah.
With the triangle? Okay.
With that triangle boy on there.
I knew what a fourchette piercing. The minute it said it in the book, fourchette piercing, I was like, Actually, HB Susan and I are friends, and Susan messaged me and was like, oh my fucking God. I did not know what a fourchette piercing was. And I was like, that's how I found out that that's in this book. And then I got to that point and I was like, yeah. Here we go.
Aw, yeah. Yeah, and I love her reasoning for it. It's great. Did you go nuts for this book?
Absolutely. To be
I went
fair,
nuts for this book.
This book is catnip to me. So it reminded me, I fucking love a serial killer romance. So if you like this book, listener, just recommending Only James's Necessary Evils series and a couple of other spin-off series.
Cool.
But that's a whole psychopath serial killer romance where they can't really feel love, but they feel anything about somebody, then it is their person.
Obsessive.
And they get very obsessive, territorial, possessive, jealous. I'll put it this way. This book made me want to do a reread of that whole series. So hard recommend Only James if you liked this book.
Although I will say that neither of these people are what I would classify as psychopaths or sociopaths.
Absolutely not. They're not psychopaths or sociopaths. It was very strange tagging this book and not tagging that.
Agreed. Okay, wait. Hold on, Sabrina. I'm trying to skip over our beautiful, illustrious, gorgeous patrons. How dare I? Oh my God. Patrons, I'm so sorry. Okay, so we had some new folks join the Patreon, and we are so thankful. So, hey, thanks and welcome to Danny L. and Laura C.,
Tori and Jennifer P.,
Juliet M. and Ursula M.,
Danny L. and Mercedes M.,
Caitlin S. and Katie R.H.,
Cassidy C. and Vanessa. Thank you.
Hey. Thanks for being part of the Patreon.
I hope you're enjoying all of the bananas things that we get up to.
Yeah.
So this book, Mel.
This book. All right. People know that I love a true crime. frankly, I'm so sorry, everyone. Like, the more gruesome, the better, if it has nothing to do with kids. So I'm awful. I'm one of those people.
This is a gory book. This is graphic violence.
It's delicious.
It's great. There's torture on page, and it is great.
Yeah.
Frankly.
It's fantastic. And like these Dexter motherfuckers, you know? Because both of them justify their actions by only killing bad people.
And I loved Dexter.
I loved Dexter. I did. And I'm not sorry about it. I'm not. Yeah. So this book comes out swinging, is really the only way to put it, because she is currently on day 3 of being locked in a non-air conditioned Louisiana, I think, shed. She's locked in a cage in the room with a dead body that has been slowly bloating and decaying over the past 3 days. She can't believe the predicament she's in. And then the body explodes all over the floor. And then this army of maggots starts inching their way toward her.
I don't know how this is going to be an 18-part episode, Mel.
It's incredible. And so she's like trying to comfort herself, and she starts singing Bye Bye Blackbird, which is one of my favorite songs, especially the Ella Fitzgerald or Joe Cocker versions.
I don't know that I'd ever heard that song before this.
Oh, so good. So good. I love particularly the Joe Cocker version. Anyway, so yeah, she starts singing that to herself, like sort of rocking back and forth. And like the voice in this book is so good because she says, like, for example, I don't mind dead bodies, but like, I like my dead bodies fresh. This nonsense is not my cup of tea. This is not how I like interacting with dead bodies. And then this beautiful man walks in and is just like, oh, wow, nice work. Like, hey, what's your name? And so she's sort of like crouched there and she says, I don't think he's going to answer you. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I know that. And I already know who he is. Like, here are his stats or whatever. I was asking you, like, what's your name? And the banter between them is so good. She pretends not to know his serial killer nicknames.
He's like, you might know me as the Boston Butcher.
Yeah.
The Massacre of Mass. The Ghost of the East Coast. And she's like, I totally know all those names, but I'm not telling him.
No, I'm not telling him. I'm not going to stroke his ego like that. And so he's like a little bit hurt.
Yeah. He's so cute.
He's so cute in this moment. So then he's like, what's your name? And she's like, I'm not comfortable telling you that. And he's like, well, all right, cool. See you never. And he turns to leave. And she's like, okay. I'm Sloane and I'm the Orb Weaver. And then he geeks out to oblivion. He's just like,
a fanboy.
Oh my God, I am such a fan of your work. Like, it is intricate and it is elegant and it is beautiful. You are incredible. And she's like, I mean, dusting her shoulder off a little bit.
Well, and then he asks, so he lets her out. By the way, very importantly, they make a lot of references to the maggots as orzo pasta. And that becomes very important later in this book. So he is like, hey, come to lunch with me. And because and she's like, dude, I'm covered in blood. And he's like, well, shower up. And then I'm feeling barbecue. So they go get barbecue.
And she is so beautiful, he says. We're in his point of view for the first time. And like, he cannot get over how beautiful she is and how like adorable she is and how nervous she is and how adorable that makes her. And he's like, she's wearing a big giant shirt of the guys tied at the waist and there is no bra because she had to take off all of her old clothes and burn them essentially. Oh my God. He can't get over her boobs. He can't get over her.
And then like she has like barbecue like in the side of her mouth and he like is like, oh my God, I just want to like lick that off. This book is from his point of view horny from get, okay? And so he is like, so why are you called the Orb Weaver instead of like Blackbird? Because I heard you singing that song. And she's like, Orb
and you've got this
Weaver is for
raven
them.
hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Orb Weaver's for them. Blackbird is for me. Like, I have, emotional ties to it. And so he's like, I get it. And immediately she's like, oh my God, he might be the only person that does.
And that is
Swoony.
so beautiful.
And so he's like super curious about her. He wants to know everything about her. And this happens throughout the book too. He's asking her about being Orb Weaver. And he's like, because her MO is basically stringing up bits of body and eyeball and gout. And he makes a comment about gouging out their eyeballs. And she's like, I don't gouge them out, butcher.
She's
I plucked
offended.
them delicately like a lady.
Like a lady. Okay.
So she gets up to get ready to leave. And he's realizing that if she leaves right now, he's never gonna see her again, because this is definitely main male character falls first in this book, and immediately this is an insta love on his part. And so she's about to leave, and he's like, you know what, Blackbird, it's all fun and games until someone loses an eye, wink. And then he's like, what if we make a competition?
What if let's
we
have
go
a game
and have 7 days to kill a person, and that is randomized, and then whoever wins gets to go kill this dude, the Phantom, up in the Pacific Northwest. And she's like, I'm intrigued, because she's been feeling missing. Something's been missing in her life.
I could not for the life of me figure out how it tied back to the Phantom. And I didn't care enough, because I loved everything else, to even go back and figure it out. But yeah, because they talk about the guy in the Pacific Northwest, and then when we get to their first game in just a minute, it's a totally different guy in West Virginia. And so I was like, what happened to Pacific Northwest guy?
So basically the annual, and it says it in the prologue. It comes up again later in the book.
Yeah.
But the prologue says, Butcher and Blackbird, annual August showdown, 7 days, tiebreaker by rock, paper, scissors, best of 5 winner takes the Forest Phantom. And so
yes. Okay, got it.
Whoever wins gets at least 3 out of 5. And wins best out of 5 gets to be the person which this was so fucking funny to me, because that means that the Forest Phantom is given free reign to just keep murdering for 5 to 6 years. So maybe they are a little on the psychopath spectrum, maybe a little bit.
That's a good point. I will say though, that she's trying to figure out who the Phantom is the whole time. They have no idea who this guy is. And so I think they're using this time to research him and figure it out before that.
But the fact that they're able to whip these random people, figure it out in 7 days, if they busted up there and were there for a month or two, and clearly they both have, based on this book, they have jobs where it's not a big deal for them to take off a couple of weeks to go do some serial killer hunting. If they wanted to kill the Phantom faster than 5 or 6 years from now, they could kill the Phantom within
they're fans
the next
of his
5
work.
years.
Fans of his work is what they are. Okay, but also, wait, really quickly. Every single chapter is titled. And every once in a while, it really stabbed me right in the heart, because the first one is Ichigo Ichi-e, which is a Japanese saying that means once in a lifetime. It's like a reminder that you should cherish every moment you have, because you can never replicate it. And so the fact that she made the first chapter when 2 serial killers meet over the body of another serial killer,
okay,
they connect.
I had no idea.
Level.
That was super cute.
It's so good.
Love
Okay,
that.
I'm so sorry.
So we zippy zap. It is a year later. They've stayed in contact over burner phones. We meet her best friend, Lark Montague, who is the heroine for the next book.
Yeah.
And we meet Lachlan, who's also the hero for the next book. I cannot wait for that enemies to lovers, one night stand, fucking craziness. I'm going to devour it.
Yeah, I already have it loaned out from the library.
Yeah, and then we also get to meet this book. No, we don't meet him yet. That's next chapter. Well, it doesn't matter. Right around here is where we also meet Theon, who is the youngest brother of these boys, and he's the third book. And in this book, we meet his heroine, Rose. So,
did you lose your mind? I lost
hoodle.
my mind. I was geeking out hard.
I can't fucking wait because that third book, it doesn't seem like it's a small town romance in fucking Nebraska. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So excited.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Really quickly. I'm so sorry. I just saw a note that I made, and it's that when they were at lunch, he realizes, because she says, "What are you doing here? Like, you're really far away from Boston." And he's like, "Wait a minute. You do know who I am, and you are a fan. Thank you very much. Like, tell me, which one of my murders was your favorite? Like, was it this one or that one? Or did you like when I strung that guy up on the blurg?" And then she's like, "Ooh, you're the absolute worst." And then he purrs at her, "You'll love me one day." It is so much. So yes, I'm sorry. Now we're the year later, and we are in her storage unit, her kill room storage unit, because she's had this feeling. She's hankering for a kill, but all of her kills are like falling short these days. And so, like I said, both of them will only, they will only go after like bad people, like proven serial killers or pedophiles or like, you know, like the baddest of the bad people in the world that justice isn't catching. And so she is like, "Oh, I really want to do this thing, but it seems really like brash." And then she gets a text from her best friend that's just a knife and a question mark. And so she calls her back and she's like, "Oh, hey, Lark." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, you got your guy on your table?" And she's like, I do. Shut up over there. All your moaning isn't going to help you.
Oh my God. And it's beautiful. Like the way she talks to her victims is beautiful. So she's like, "This is called the consequences of your actions, Michael. You want to talk to underage boys online? Show them your shriveled dick pics? Lure in the neighborhood kids with promises of puppies and candy? Since you like to talk so much, I'm taking your vocal cords first." And like, it's just beautiful. And so like good. Her little torture scenes, it's wonderful. So she gets a text message and it's from Rowan. And he's like, "Hey, my brother, Lachlan, he's going to go ahead and pull a name out of a hat." And she's like, "Well, you're going to have an advantage. It's your brother. And so you're going to have," and he's like, "If you think that my brother's going to help me, you're kidding yourself. He's more likely to help you
very mistaken.
Than help me."
Yeah.
And so Lachlan pulls a name. Or not a name, a place, West Virginia. And so we get a text message from Lachlan to their little group text. And he's like, "Good luck, eyeball spider lady," or whatever the hell your name is. And then just think, little brother, your title of loser is about to be official.
Yeah. And so she's still sort of going back and forth in her mind about like, do I go? Do I do this? And she's on the phone with Lark. And Lark is like, "Well, what's the problem with it?" And she's like, "Well, like, it's impulsive and it's stupid and it's dangerous, especially for somebody with my hobby. Like, taking chances on trusting other people is bananas, right?" And Lark says this very important thing that goes through the rest of the book. She's like, "I mean, I think it might be really wonderful for you to have a friend that understands this part of you. You know, I love you and I'm your best friend and I'm your family. But at the end of the day, I don't really understand this part of you at all." So it might be really good. And like, maybe you could become best friends with benefits or whatever too. Like, the sky's the limit, frankly. And so she then texts him a picture of like her glass of champagne in business class being like, "See you there, sucker." It's the best.
Immediately though, just that picture has him getting a boner. He's like,
"Oh God, he's so excited."
Like that hand around my cock, like, it's going to be so good, like beautiful.
It's
and then
so good.
She's like, "I'm about to take off. If this were a race, you'd already be behind." Oh, wait, it is a race. See ya, sucker. Safe travels and get fucked. Kissy face. Like their banter is so perfect in this book.
I love it. And then meanwhile, he is talking to his two brothers and they're making fun of him for like not even being in the friend zone. They're like, you are so desperate for this lady and like you're not even in the friend zone. So like maybe try to fix that on this trip.
I will also say this is the moment where I immediately fell in love with Fionn because in Rowan's head he's thinking about Fionn and he's like, that nerd's probably assigning numeric values to knowing the gossip versus being out of the loop and is weighing the statistical probability of his happiness divided by pi. And I was like, oh, that's my hero.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the heroine is yours too. Can you imagine? We'll get
motorcycle
to it,
circus performer?
No. This heroine.
Oh, yeah.
This heroine has to do math out the wazoo in order to set up her scenes.
Not only that, oh my God, just wait. It's so many niche interests.
It's everything I know.
She's a data analyst. Like.
Yes. Data analyst. She has to do so much math because she creates what are essentially topographic maps that have.
Using ArcGIS. Which I know how to use. I fucking love ArcGIS, and she uses it. So there's So ArcGIS is a mapping software where you can have different layers, and so she uses the eyeballs to create a scale. And then she creates every layer, topographical layer. So there's boundaries. There's like swamplands, there's floodplains, there's roads, there's all of these things, and they're all different layers that are created using her webs. And there's different, like, they're literally different layers, and she spends she makes them in her hotel room before she goes to the scene.
According to the size of the room she's gonna stage them in.
And then she takes off pieces of their body and hangs all of those bits on the map where his other victim, or I guess hers, but we only see male serial male people. His victims were, and oh my God, and then she does things like she pulled from his bicep, and the victim for that person, his name started with a B, and so she put that where that is, and like apart from his like chest, from his heart is where like that house is, where they get the where she does the murder, and she like it was intricate.
It's the geekiest, nerdiest, most hilarious, wonderful thing. And I can't even begin to understand how that gets calculated or, set up. I have no idea. But that used to be your literal job, right?
Literally my job.
Literally Sabrina's job. She was a programmer for that shit.
When she mentioned ArcGIS, I was like, bitch, I could have wrote you a program for that. I could still write you a program to do that. Like,
Sloan, reach out to Sabrina. She's here to be your software wingman.
And you know what? Frankly, I support a Dexter. So
I don't hate a Dexter. Ugh. Yeah. Although I do think I have a few notes in here that are like, they're playing a little fast and loose with like the proof of each person. They're playing
absolutely. There's a lot of whimsying in this book. There's a lot of whimsying in this book.
So, I'm sorry. So, she's sitting in the lobby of this motel in West Virginia. She's got her e-reader, and she's still being like, I should just leave right now. I should just leave. And she's trying to stop being nervous and just relax. And then he comes in, and he is immediately their immediate banter because she's staring at this cat and he's like, are you trying to eat that cat's soul? And she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I figured that's how you got your freckles. And then he tries to take her e-reader to see what she's reading. And she's like, it's dragon smut. Okay. It's double dong dragon smut. And he's like, oh my God, let me borrow it. I need that sexy dragon boy double penetration. I love it.
The innkeeper pops out of nowhere because they're sharing a bottle of wine that he stole. And so, I think that was the red herring is oh my God, this innkeeper is acting weird because, clearly Rowan stole a bottle of wine from the kitchen. No, the minute that innkeeper walked in, I was like, that's him. That's the fucking killer. This fucking weirdo.
That's right.
So, also, she specifically says before she goes to bed and like saunters off, she says to him, I'm maybe going on a solo hiking trip, blah, blah, blah. Good night, weirdo. No boys allowed unless they have scales and a breeding kink. And he says of all the times to forget my dinosaur onesie at home. Like, their banter in this book is so top tier. It's just beautiful.
So good.
So it's the next day, and he's like, let me into your room. Because we want to chat. And if you let me in, then I'll tell you how I got the scar, because he has a scar through his lip. And he's like, how I got the scar you always stare at. And she's like, you're the worst.
I don't know what you're talking about. Also, I'm so sorry. At the first lunch, she starts calling him pretty boy, too. She's calling him pretty boy this whole time because the waitress was like super into him and he didn't notice. And so he is just so excited that she thinks he's pretty. And it's so good. I'm sorry. So she's still calling him pretty boy. Carry on.
So then he's like, wait, where are you going? And she's like, going out, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, I'll come. And she's like, you can't come. And he's like, oh my fucking God, it's a date? And she's like,
it's a
maybe.
Date? And he's like, well, tell me where you're going and who you're going with. And she's like, I don't think so. I'm going to stay safe all on my own. So then he spends the next 3 hours and he's mad that it's 3. He's like,
he's
Rita,
pacing.
It's 3 hours. He's pacing his room. He doesn't know what to do with himself. He wants to go like emotionally get drunk. But what if she needs him in the middle of, his drunkenness? So he can't do that. And then he hears her door open and shut. And he's like, oh, thank goodness she's back. She's safe. And then he hears her music go on. And then he hears like the bed springs go creak a bit. And then he starts hearing just like the lowest buzzing sound. And he's like, oh God. So he like gets closer to the wall being like, is what I think happening? And then all he hears is her moan, Rowan. And he's like, no, or it could have been Cohen, or it could have been Samoan, but I'm going to go with Rowan. That's what I'm going to do.
And then he hears another weird noise. And so he is tracking along the wall.
It's more of a flesh slapping noise.
Turns out there's somebody hiding in the walls. Frogging. There's a this is like borderline frogging. And I'm not okay with it.
Mm-hmm. And he's also jerking it, watching her through a painting.
Yeah, saying cool. Gross stuff. And then so Rowan grabs a lamp and busts through the painting. Turns out it's just canvas. And there's peepholes through it on both sides. And she's freaking out. She's like, you can hear her hollering. She's like, Rowan Kane? God. What the fuck? And this dude is vanished, okay? And so he comes running out of the room and knock on her door. And she opens it and she's like, there was a man in the wall. And she says, I know. His name is Rowan Kane and he has no fucking boundaries because he's a fucking pervy weirdo. She's like, no, there was a dude jacking it, watching you through the wall. It was fucking that's the thing. And then she's we
gotta go get him.
So she goes and grabs her knife and she's like, I fucking knew it. And she goes stomping off. It's a beautiful knife that she got off of Etsy. And it's her favorite. Oh my God. And then she's tromping down the stairs and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm boobing boobily, Rowan. What does it look like? And he's like, you're what?
What?
And she's like, chasing that motherfucker down. That's what.
He's obviously the guy. And then he's like, wait, is that who you were out with today? The guy from the hotel? And she's like, maybe.
The emo wanker with a pink tie.
Oh my God. So they end up chasing him and they get all the way to the caretaker cottage on the same property where this guy lives. And she is running after him until Rowan rugby tackles her onto the ground. And he's like,
and then we have one of my favorite micro tropes.
Yes.
Because he tackles her, but he takes the brunt of the fall by flipping around so she lands on top of him to save her from the fall. That's my favorite micro trope. One of them. I fucking love it. I love it so much.
Yes. And then he's like, you're going to stay back and I'm going to get this guy. And she's like, what? What are you talking about? I identified him. He's mine. And he's like, no, you're going to stay out of the way and safe and stuff because I've suddenly turned into a caveman. And the garage door goes up. This guy comes like screeching out backwards with his car. And so he jumps onto the hood of the car and starts smashing the windshield with a rock. And all he can think about is how this guy was watching her and how the fuck dare he, because she is his. And so he's bashing it in. The car gets wrecked into a tree. And then as she's like coming out, his hand is covered in his own blood because he did get on that windshield. And then he goes up to her and he grabs her by the throat. And he's like, you are going to stay safe in the shadows.
And he walks her backwards this way into the forest.
And then he just says, mine. And then very slowly, one sticky finger at a time takes his hand off of her throat. And then he goes and he beats the man to death after getting into his ear and saying, she's mine. Like, you should not have done that because she's mine. And then he beats the man literally to death. His jaw breaks, one of an eyeball almost pops out kind of situation. It's gnarly. It's gnarly and great. And then he's like a wreck over it, right? The adrenaline is sort of crashing. And he looks up and he's like, Sloane? And then he's like, oh no, of course she ran away. Of course she's going to get as far away from me as possible because I'm an absolute maniac who probably scared the tar out of her. And then he's just like racked and he's sobbing and he just says, Sloane, Sloane. And then she comes out of the darkness. The chapter is called Cubism Era because she comes out and she's like, oh, it's really interesting. His like eye is over there. His nose is like by his chin. You're really embracing your Cubism era. And he's like, you're here. She's like, yep. And I'm not going anywhere. Let's clean this up and let's get you cleaned up too. So then there's caretaking.
She goes and tidies him up, and specifically while they're in there and she's cleaning him up in Francis's bathroom, that's the dude's name, he tells her about the scar on his lip came from his dad. We find out that he's originally from, because he has a slight Irish accent, by the way, listener.
Yeah.
And he immigrated from Ireland him and his brothers when he was a teenager. And we find out that his dad gave him the scar on the lip with a broken dinner plate. And that's the night that he started killing because he and Lachlan killed his dad because of it. His dad was an abusive alcoholic.
Super abusive,
and
awful.
Did drugs and awful. Finds out his mom died giving birth to Fionn, so he didn't have any family after that. And she says, I'm sorry. And he said, don't be. Wouldn't have wound up here if everything hadn't happened the way it did. I have no regrets about where I am.
And everyone's heart grew 3 sizes in that moment.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And then they finish cleaning up over the next couple of days and we're just back to life. So they've started.
Now it's 4 months later.
Texting. 6 months. And they've started texting every day. Sometimes it's memes. Sometimes it's thoughts. Sometimes it's like just the randomest
just
little
check-ins.
things.
And she looks forward to their interactions every single day, and she can't imagine her life without him now.
And so she admits to Lark that she almost left him that day. And she's like, he seemed vulnerable in the moment and I couldn't leave him. And Lark's like, go see him. And she's like, I can't do that. And she's like, no, you can. Like, I understand why you're hesitant because you don't want to mess it up, but also like you might never meet somebody like this again. He's probably the only one out there like you. And maybe your friendship could go up in flames, but like, I understand these worries, but you got to take the risk, man.
It could be amazing.
Sometimes the best things come out of the fire. And so now it's 3 months later and she's at 3 and
she's
Coach
been thinking about it for 3 months because that's who she is as a person.
Yes. And so we found out earlier in the book, he's a restaurateur and a chef, and he owns a restaurant called 3 and Coach. And so we zippy zap, and she is standing in front of that restaurant like, oh my fucking God, I can't believe I'm doing this. I haven't told him anything. He has no idea that I'm here. Like a fucking weirdo. I'm just here. And she goes in and she immediately gets sat down.
So when they were at the diner at the beginning, she chose the table they went to before the hostess even was able to do it. And he noticed that she chose a table that was equidistant from all of the exits and to where she could see the whole restaurant. And so when she goes into 3 and Coach, the hostess sort of looks her up and down and she has this small smile on her face and she's like, yep, come this way. And she takes her to a table that is equidistant between all of the exits and she can see the whole restaurant. It's meant for 4 people. And this lady just takes all the rest of the things off and goes away. And she's like, that's really weird because there are tables that would be more appropriate for a single diner, but okay, whatever. Who knows?
This is where I would have wanted to sit anyway.
Yeah. I was going to ask to sit here anyway. And then she sees the hostess about to go into the kitchen, but then a big group comes in and she gets distracted. And so now she's just I am the weirdest fucking stalker weirdo and I don't know what to do with myself. She thinks about leaving again and she orders and she's like, I don't know what to do with my hands or anything else. And so she starts sketching.
Then Lachlan walks in, and she has never met Lachlan, obviously, but she knows exactly who he is because obviously she's Googled all of these people and she has done all of her hell. She doesn't need to Google. She probably hacked into some shit and
there we go.
Has his social security number.
Yeah.
And so she sees him walk in. She panics.
And he sees her.
She knows he sees her, but she doesn't. Yeah. I don't think she knows that he recognizes her. And so she gets the rest of her food to go. She's like, I gotta leave, whatever. And as she's walking out of the restaurant, she hears Blackbird. And she turns around and Rowan is standing there.
In a chef coat that has the splatter of the soup that she ate that day on it.
And his, oh my God, and his arms, another micro trope, his fucking chef coat is rolled up. So his forearms are all out on display. And he looks
see what you're doing, Brynn Weaver.
And hungry and feral. And she left her piece of art that she was drawing. She was drawing a raven. She ripped it out of her notebook and left it on the table because she just wanted to leave something of hers behind, even if it was just momentarily, something that was important, that was hers in some place that was so important to him.
And then she sees him see that and she's like, oh my God, I'm mortified. He saw me leave a drawing for him like a goddamn middle schooler. And what am I doing with my whole life? And I have to get out of here. And he's like, what are you doing here? And she says, eating. And he says, in Boston, what are you doing in Boston? And she's like, I just had work trip meetings, with work and job stuff meetings. And he's like, okay. And she's like, actually, I really have to go do work stuff. So job, gotta go. She tries to turn around and then he grabs her by the wrist and he's like, no, stay. And then they get interrupted by a lady who walks in and comes and says hello to Rowan with kissing his cheek and she's beautiful and glamorous.
And they're all there because it's Lachlan's birthday.
Yeah. And so she's just like, I have to go.
And so she leaves. She rebooks her flight. So she's leaving immediately the next morning. And he texts her the next day and he's like, hey, can we talk? And she's like, yeah, when I get home. And she just never texts him.
Yeah, she doesn't text him. And then he has to text did you get home okay the other day? And she's like, oh, yeah, so sorry I didn't text you. It's just so busy. It's just busy over here. Oh.
And then she apologizes for showing up unexpectedly. And she was like, that was probably really weird of me. And he's like, it wasn't weird. I wish that I knew you were there. And I wish that you had stayed.
Yeah.
So we zippy zap.
And then a little boy comes to her door.
We zippy zap.
It's 10 days after she left Boston.
And now Rowan's being the fucking weirdo.
Yeah. He's standing behind a tree within eyesight of her front door. And he watches the little boy he paid $100 by the end of it to take a bag of groceries up to her door and not say a word, kid, okay? Do not say a word. And so she has this like bag in her arms and she's looking around and he like hides behind the tree again. And then she texts him and she's like, hey, did you send me orzo pasta to my house? And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But like, you should get it out. And like, if there's Parmesan in there, just by any chance, you should shred that. And I bet there might be mushrooms. Maybe you should wash those. And then asparagus goes really well on the side. Is there any asparagus in there by chance? So she calls him and she is like, what are you doing? And he says, I'm doing what we should have done when you came to Boston, and that's cooking together. You could have stayed and I would have brought you back to the kitchen and we would have cooked something together. And so that's what we're going to do now. So like, take out your stuff and I'm going to walk you through doing this. And so he coaches her through making pasta from across the street behind a tree over the phone.
And she has no idea that he's there. But most importantly, she's like, you were busy. I was intruding. And he said, I would have made time for you. I swallow before I can say more than I should. You're my friend. Maybe someday my best friend.
Oh my God.
And then he like, oh my God, this is hilarious because he learns about her pencil skirt situation at work and how she does like presentations and stuff.
Oh.
And he's immediately rock hard. And he's like, can I come like watch you do like a presentation? Because specifically he says the thought of professional Sloane and a fucking curve-hugging pencil skirt and a Madonna mic standing on stage as she bosses around a bunch of doctors with her raspy lounge singer voice is the fantasy I never knew I needed. I'm a fucking goner.
Oh, he is. He is a goner.
He's so, like, every time we're in his head, listener, he is so smitten and just enraptured by her. It is fantastic.
It's wonderful. Yeah. So they end up doing that for the next like 5 nights or something. He just stays in Raleigh doing that, but not going in and not seeing her in person.
She has no idea.
And he doesn't, because he doesn't want to scare her away.
Also, really importantly, while they're on the phone, he's like, so like, why don't you draw for a living? Like, why do you work for a soulless biotech corporation, basically? And we find out that art brings up a lot of bad memories for her. And she used to love painting and experimenting with sculpture and things like that. But things changed. And she says sketching is like the foundation. It's all that was left when the rest burned down.
Yeah.
That and my webs, which feels like art to me. And that's just very important for the end of the book.
Yeah.
So I just needed to let you know that.
Absolutely.
So the last day that he's there, he's behind the tree, but he doesn't have groceries delivered. And she walks out of the house and looks around like, where's the little kid?
Where's my groceries?
She should be here by now.
Yeah.
And then he gets in his rental car and leaves, and he gets a text message, but he refuses to look at it because he knows that if he looks at it before he's home, he's going to go kick down that door and take what he wants.
And like, I know the answer is because the book would be over, but like, why not? Like, why didn't he go in? Like, come on. Ooh.
Well, also, to be clear, if he had gone in, she would have run. She'd be gone.
What? Do you think so?
There's absolutely.
That's wild.
Does not, her self-esteem is so low as far as other people. She's so shy.
Yeah.
She's so anxious. Like that would have scared her off immediately. Like he has to be doing the little tippy toes because otherwise she'd be like, deuces. I'm out.
Yeah, okay.
Like this is
too
scary.
All right. Yeah.
But specifically, the text message that she sent him was like, I missed you today. And he says, I missed you too. And like, that's a big step for her to be like, I missed you.
That's huge. Huge. So now we zippy zap and it's 4 months later and they are somewhere else. And she is trying to schmooze this like food guy. He's a foodie. And she's like, the way, it's hard to get an invitation to this guy's house, but like I'm managing to do it. And it's their next competition because they were told there is a killer in this area. And so he comes up out of nowhere and he's like, oh, Sloane. Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt. It's just like so nice to see you. And like, wow. And she doesn't want to blow it with this guy because one of his like biggest pet peeves is bad manners. And so she's like, would you like to sit down? Like, and like her eyes say, don't you dare. Don't you dare. And he's like, actually, I would love to. Thank you so much. So he pulls up a seat. Mm-hmm. He manages to woo this guy. And then they're both invited to dinner the next night at this guy's house. Mm-hmm. And he's so excited to have a chef in their midst because I don't know that we actually said this out loud. He's the restaurant owner, but he's also the chef. And like, that's his like life's work. Mm-hmm. So they're geeking out over food. Meanwhile, she's sort of getting the lay of the land and she sees basically his method of attack through art on the walls. And it is wonderful. But as they're talking, she's like, oh, the goat cheese, whatever, is like great. And, you know, he talks about putting figs in it or whatever. And then she starts taking a drink of her drink only because the guy also took a drink. And then she starts noticing that Rowan is getting he's doing a bit of a wooze. And then the guy's like, I'm so excited for you to see our next course. And his like minion brings it out. He says that this guy has had an accident recently. And so he's taken him under his employ. And she sees ice pick marks on his eyes and like some bruising. And she's like, oh my God, he lobotomized this guy. And now he's his perma servant. This is fucking crazy. And she's trying to notify Rowan of this, but she can't do it with words out loud. And at one point, she tries to be like, she's making just mouth.
Lobotomy.
Yeah, she's like, lobotomy. And he's like, what? And she's like, lobotomy. And he goes, you love me? And she's like, no.
Well, and like, he's getting a little woozy, which means he's saying things he doesn't mean. Yeah. And so at one point, she like makes a comment because Thorsten, the guy that they're here to kill, he's like, oh, you guys make such a cute couple. Mm-hmm. And she's like, we're not a couple. She says, well, it's hard to compete with the stunning waitstaff and Rowan's adoring socialite regulars. Uh-huh. And he says, no one competes with Sloane. She just hasn't realized it yet.
Oh my God.
And then
tell them.
He says to her, you always look pretty. When you came to the restaurant, I said. Rowan hiccups twice, then drowns the next one with a gulp of wine. I said, Sloane is the most beautiful girl in the world. And then my brother called me a feckin' Egypt because I could have all the pussy I wanted in Boston, but instead I've taken a vow of abstinence.
And she corrects abstinence.
Abstinence over a girl who doesn't want me. And she's like, oh my fucking God, I can't believe he just said that. But like, also,
Then the beef niçoise comes out.
And my note is, oh my God, this is human, isn't it?
Yeah. And Rowan goes, beef niçoise. I love beef niçoise. And she's like, Rowan, no. He's just shoveling this salad into his mouth. And they're talking, and the guy says, oh yeah, I added a little bit more extra sugar to the Dijon dressing because the meat's a little gamey. She's like, Rowan!
He's like, how do you like it? And
yes.
Well, Rowan's fucking woozy, though. He's like, oh my God, this is so fucking good. This is incredible.
Delicious.
It's delicious.
And then he face plants into his plate, passes out. And he's got a little bit of like the rawish meat hanging off of his tongue. And the guy looks over at Rowan and then he sort of like, comes out of his serial killer boner haze. And he looks over at her and she's like, oh, so it's just the two of us. And then we zippy zap again. He's waking up and she is straddling this guy in a chair. He's moaning and she's like, stay still. I would tell you it would hurt less if you stayed still, but that would be a total lie. And then she just like puts an eyeball onto the plate that's on the table. And Rowan's like,
Rowan vomits.
What's happening? Yeah, she's already gotten him a barf bucket, which is so cute and sweet and wonderful. And then he looks up and she's got her spider web all over the dining room. And he's like, this is fucking magnificent. Like, this is bananas. And then she's like, David's eating everything in the kitchen. She's like, all the food. And he's like, well, that's normally what people eat. I don't know why that's weird. And she's like, it's human. You ate human. You ate human. You ate a person. He's like, what? And he starts throwing up again. And then she's like, did you know that it was rump roast? I had to torture that guy to find out it was a rump roast and to find out that I scraped human ass out of your mouth so you didn't choke. And he's like, please stop, as he's just vomiting into this bowl. Oh my God.
Oh my God. It's so funny. And then she's like, so like, how much do you remember of what happened before? And he realizes that she is asking if he remembers his confessions about how pretty she is and how amazing she is. And he's like, so he lies. And he's like, I don't remember anything after dinner. And she's like, oh, thank God.
Well, she looks relieved and it breaks his whole heart. He's like, oh no.
And he's like, this fucking girl panicking because I gave her a glimpse into how I feel, clearly nervous about a conversation she's desperate not to have. And I would do anything to keep her around, even if it means taking a hammer to my own heart.
Yeah.
I need to get it through my thick fucking skull that she will never want more than this.
And like, that's not true. You're two ships passing in the misunderstanding nights, you know? Like, you're just, sometimes nerves are for different reasons.
Yeah. So this is when we get the explanation about how her frickin' maps work. It was fascinating and fantastic and brilliant. And like, he tells her that, he tells her that her webs are art. And they're like right up in front of each other and he's looking down at her and he could so easily just lean down and give her a kiss. And he like runs his hand through her, or he wants to run his hand through her raven hair and tell her about how she's brilliant and cunning and beautiful. And he has fun with her. And even though he feels like complete shit, he's disappointed that this year's game is nearly over because he hates watching her walk away.
Yeah.
But he's afraid that if he pushes for more, he'll drive her away. Being in his head, listener, is so swoony.
It is. Oh my God. He pines so hard and so eloquently.
And now, while she's getting ready to kill Thorsten, we get her backstory, which is fucked. So she started killing people because when she was in college, high school or college.
It was like a boarding high school.
Yeah, with her best friend Lark. And she was being sexually abused by the headmaster. And she was saying basically that I can take this. It's just for another couple of years. There's an end in sight. And then she found out he was doing the same thing to Lark. And that she had been hiding it.
And that's where it ended for her.
That was it. And so she made a vow that she would wipe out anyone like him that she could find. And then and erase them from the world one at a time. And she promised herself that she would never let anyone hurt somebody that she cared about again. And then this was such a scene. I have goosebumps right now. She lifts the knife above her and Thorsten, and she says, "This is me keeping my promise." And it's silent, and they're just standing there like that, and he's tied to the chair, and then he starts to beg, "Please." And then she plunges the knife into his stomach and eviscerates him. And she says, "Since you asked so nicely, let's spill the filth from your guts together."
Yes. Yeah.
And then she's in shock because she's like living all of these memories.
Yeah. Isn't this where she says, like, you love hearing your victim scream. Like, I bet you didn't stop when David asked you to stop because you love hearing your victim scream. But here's what I need you to know about me. I also love to hear my victim scream. Hoo dangy. Oh boy.
Yep.
Yeah. And so she's in shock and he goes over and like takes her against his chest and he's like, you're okay. Lark is okay. Everybody is okay.
And then they have a little combo where he like brings her out of it and he's like, maybe we should go stop David from eating more human, you know? And she's like, it's so much worse than just eating human. And he's like, how could it be worse? And she's like, it's raw. It's fucking
Some of it's raw. Some of it's
and
raw.
He's like, oh my God, we need to save him. So they go in there and bet he... Okay, Mel, I have to tell you, I was disappointed by the ice cream scene.
Why?
There was so much buildup. I've heard about nothing but how horrifying and traumatizing this ice cream scene. The ice cream scene is. Yeah. People lost their shit. Much like Rowan, they cannot eat cookies and cream ice cream anymore because of this book.
What?
Like, there are people who cannot look at ice cream without thinking about this. And frankly, I don't even know. Like, it would have barely gotten
I forgot it happened
if I hadn't heard nothing
about it.
Me too. I would have if it hadn't been so...
It comes back quite a bit in the book. And that's why I think it like sort of solidifies because she is looking at this thing and they're trying to like wash up because like they're serial killers. They have to get their DNA off of everything. And like they really are in the scenes in a way that I don't think is very a good idea for serial killers. It's okay though. I'm sure fictionally it works out.
I hard whimsied that.
Yeah. I was like, you're leaving evidence everywhere. There's trace evidence fucking everywhere. Anyway, so they end up doing dishes and she looks over and David's just shoveling this cookies and cream ice cream into his mouth. And she goes over and she takes it and she's like, let's read the ingredients, shall we? Because it's obviously homemade. And she's like, cream, sugar, and then semen, milked between April 10th and April 13th. And he's like, no! She's like, that's a really weird substitute for salt. And he's like, no! He's barfing into the sink. And she cannot stop teasing him over it. But this felt like the least... He ate human
Shocking
ass.
Thing.
That was a whole gluteal
and neither
muscle.
of them ate, neither of them ate the ice cream.
Yeah, nobody ate the ice cream.
David ate the ice cream.
Yeah, nobody ate it.
Anyway, so the most important part here is that as they're getting ready to leave, they're all done with cleanup and they're outside looking at the stars. And she convinces him to take David back to be a dishwasher because she's worried about him being taken care of. And she admits to him that she was lying about Boston and that she didn't have a meeting there. And
then just walks away and gets in her car.
Shock. Yeah. How did
he let her walk away?
He says, I hate this part when she leaves. I loathe it. And then chapter end.
Chapter end. Okay, so now we zippy zap. It is 8 months later. She's getting ready in her hotel room because she has been invited to a fancy, classy awards dinner night because Rowan is receiving like the best restaurant in Boston award. And he called her saying like, I'm calling in my win and like I get my prize now and that is you're coming to this thing with me because we can have some real fun together. You're the only person I can have real fun with. And she's like, OMG, like it might be happening. And I think I'm pretty excited for it to happen. And I kind of don't know what to do with myself. She's FaceTiming with Lark and Lark is like, do more boobs, more boobs. Like you really got to go for it this time.
Also, super importantly, during these 8 months, the first 6 months, they texted daily about just random things, super relaxed, super like best friends. And then, but for the last 2 months, he'll take up to a week to respond because he's really busy opening a second restaurant.
Yeah.
Which becomes
very important. Yeah.
So she goes down to the lobby. She's all dressed up, looking, incredible.
I mean.
And he sees her and they hug for the first time. And he embraces her and then holds. So then he like pulls away and holds her arms. And then he presses his lips to her neck. And like there's this electric charge in the air. And she's like, how can a man simultaneously look so cocky while also blushing? It's intoxicating. And he says, I would have kissed your cheek, but I didn't want to ruin your makeup.
Yeah, that's the only reason. I kissed you on your pulse point. Oh my God. And then he holds her hand out to the car. He's gotten a fancy, spiffy car for them. And then he holds her hand in the car. Holy shit. And she's like, this is very fancy. And he goes, what? Am I going to drive you in a Honda Accord? I am not taking the most beautiful girl of the event to the event of the year in a Honda Accord or whatever. Oh my God. And so during the course of this conversation, she asks him, why me? Like, I know that you're friends with like literally everybody in Boston. Why do you want to take me to this thing? And he says, because like I said, you're my best friend. I want to be able to spend an evening with my best friend. And her soul shrivels into the tiniest little hedgehog ball and really tries to like roll under the seat. It's terrible.
Yeah. So they're at the gala. He is unsurprisingly charismatic as fuck, and he's great at bringing her out of her shell and giving her a reason to talk to people and like start conversations. And then he's up talking to somebody, and she is watching him because this tall, beautiful man sucks all the air from the room like an inferno.
Oh my God.
And she just can't stop thinking about how beautiful and wonderful he is and how important he is in her life and like how they can be monsters and like we don't deserve the same things other people do. Happiness, affection, love. But I can't stop that when I look at every facet of Rowan from his brightest light to his deepest, most dangerous dark. Maybe I don't deserve it for the things I've done, but I want it. I want more with him than what I've got. And so she takes the jump. She walks up to him and asks him to dance with her. And we have another favorite micro trope where they dance together.
Yes.
So they're dancing and she's feeling all fluttery and heady and breathless.
He's got his face in her neck at one point. She can feel his breath on her neck. And then he says, now do you want to have some real fun? And she's like, do I want to have some real fun? Like she sort of freezes. And he's like, look over my shoulder. The guy at like 3:00, he's got glasses on. That is Dr. Somebody. And he has been murdering his patients, at least 6 in Boston alone. And I thought maybe we could hunt him together. Like he never stays at these things long. We can go, we can do a quick murder, come back, great alibi. And she's like, okay. And he's like, what? Aren't you excited? He's like, I'm not going to get anything on your dress or whatever. I'll do all the messy stuff. And she's like, yeah, wow, it's just like something I didn't really expect. And he's like, you didn't expect that I wanted to do this when I said that you're the only person I can have real fun with? She's like, no, actually, turns out that doesn't directly translate. I thought it was something else. And then he says, wait, you thought it was something else and you're here? And she says, yeah. And then he says, holy shit. And like his whole demeanor changes. He's like leaning in. They are about to kiss. And then a siren starts going off on his phone. That is his ringtone, a siren. Wowee.
I imagine that's his emergency ring. Well, I guess it would have to be just his normal ringtone.
How do you
that's
do
heinous. Yeah, that's heinous. Oh, God, yeah. So their first kiss is interrupted. And then it turns out that another thing has gone wrong at 3 and Coach.
Yeah.
So this is something very important is like for months, 3 and Coach, just thing after thing after thing has been going
It's just
wrong.
a shit show.
Yeah. And he's like, I have to do that. And so he starts to leave.
Well, and she says, I'll go with you because the pastry oven literally exploded. And so she's like, I'll go with you and I'll help. And he's like, no, I can't. I'm so sorry. I cannot have you around that kind of danger. Like an oven exploded. So like, go back to your hotel, you know, and I'm so fucking sorry about this. I can't even tell you how much I regret this happening.
So then he's almost gone, but then he turns around and gets this look of determination on his face.
Oh my
and
God.
he starts stalking back to her. And I'm like, this is it.
Yeah,
He's going to stalk back and just like grab her by the face and give her a big old smooch. And it's gonna be here. Because listener, can I just say, I was not prepared for this book to be a slow burn.
No, me
This
neither.
is like over 50% into the book.
Yeah.
This is all happening.
And the tension is top notch. God.
Yes. But then his fucking phone goes off again and he's like, damn, like you can see it on his face. Like, God damn it, I have to go.
Yeah.
Like, ugh. And so
Then he turns
around
and
and he leaves. And then she texts him to ask, like, hey, with everything going on, are you going to be able to even make our competition in August? And he says, I'll blow up the restaurant myself before I miss it.
See you in August. And I died.
It was so good.
Okay, we open up in like this thunder and rainstorm in rural Texas. And he's standing in front of one of the scariest houses and like pieces of property in Everdom.
Yes.
It's like dilapidated. It's a shack. It's got like weird stuff around it. Like there's a doll head that's used as decoration. You know, it's like one of those houses.
Mm-hmm.
And she comes up and she's like, oh, so this is the guy, huh? She's like, did you win? And he's like, no, I haven't won yet. I haven't gone in. And then they hear the...
So this is a great example of like, these people might be psychopaths, you know? Because
they might be psychopaths.
Because like they hear this and there's like this brutal screaming and then it shuts off. Like there's no more screaming anymore. The chainsaw goes away and they're like, maybe
we should just go for beers.
Yeah, maybe we just won't go do this at all, you know?
Yeah.
But they do decide to do it. So they do walk into like Temu, Texas Chainsaw Massacre's house.
Yeah. This guy is a combination of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the guy from Psycho, can't remember his name right now, meant to look it up earlier, and Ed Gein. Because he does the mild decoration with body parts in his house.
Oh,
Yeah, there's like wind chimes in the hole in the roof that are made of bones. Human bones.
Whimsied that. Whimsied the hell out of that. Anyway. Yeah, so they're here and so they walk in and they're wandering around.
I'm so sorry, Sabrina. There was one other thing that I remembered. What I realized is that because the original rules that he came up with included breaking ties with rock, paper, scissors, she looked up the most probable answer that people give, and she is losing on purpose. This bitch puts out scissors because she wants to go in the front door.
She also knows, based on his history, that he uses rock.
He always chooses rock.
Mm-hmm.
Dumbass. He does not realize that she has him figured out because he does not want her going in the front door. He's like, this guy is huge. He is unhinged. And like, I'm worried, you know? And she's like, don't worry. We'll both be in there and like, I'm going to kick your ass.
Oh, but it's so cute because, like, so while we're standing on this fucking hill staring at fucking Wish.com Texas Chainsaw House.
Yeah.
It says, this is in her point of view, and it says, our gazes collide and my heart folds in on itself. No one has ever looked at me like this with so much caged worry and fear. And for the first time, it's not fear of me. It's fear for me.
That's right.
Babies.
Oh, I love them. There are so many lines in this book that have just like taken my whole heart out. And like there are so
know-
many lines in this book that made me like stop dead in my tracks.
Mel, I have a confession to tell you.
What? Tell me.
Okay, so listener, I haven't delved into this with you, and I'm not going to delve into it right now because that's a whole Patreon episode. But I have revamped the way that I track my books, right? Which means I copy my highlights as I'm reading directly out of Kindle into my notes,
Yes.
right? We haven't hit this point yet, but in a couple of chapters, we hit a point where I highlighted so much that it popped in to be like, you can't do this anymore.
This is plagiarism.
You've hit 10% of this book. You can't highlight and copy out of this book anymore. Yeah.
I didn't know there was a limit.
The publisher can set it. Yeah.
That's smart. Yeah.
It is smart. It means that people can't highlight for bad reasons, right? But like,
Yeah.
I'm not sharing this with that. This is just my own personal
Yeah.
whatever. But like,
Yeah.
I did hit that point. So you're sitting here talking about like, there's so many quote, blah, blah. Mel, I
couldn't highlight
probably have them. Oh, no, don't. Oh, don't be silly. Don't be silly, Mel.
Did you go back and unhighlight?
No, because that doesn't work. It tracks it. So it tracks how many. So if you can only have 5 total highlights, right? And you highlight 5 things and it gives you the error and you go back and unhighlight something to go highlight something else, it's like, sorry, you still can't do that. But it's not highlighting, it's copying out of the book what it is. So don't worry. I still have more highlights. They're just not in my notes. They're done the old-fashioned way where they're sitting in my Kindle highlights.
I mean, did you start highlighting everything around the time he told her that she was not allowed to hide from him anymore? Because that's one of the places I lost my goddamn mind.
I did not hit my limit yet after that scene. I didn't hit my limit until like close to the end of the book. It's only like 3 or 4 chapters from the end of the book. But like probably a big reason that I can't do any more highlights and copying is in fact
the sex scene?
Because of it's on TM. The couple of them, okay?
Woo woo! Yeah. It
We're
gets
not
serious
even there
business.
yet. But yeah, so I get you, Mel, because you're like, oh my God, there's so many quotes. Yeah, bitch, I know. I fucking know that I probably have them highlighted and put in my notes. So anyway, they go into this house and they're like wandering around. It's like dead quiet, dead silent.
He goes in the back, she goes in the front. They're separated because it is a competition. It's dead silent. It smells a little bit like decay, which she can't really understand at first, and it's all musty and stuff. But then she goes into the living room and he has Norman Bates'd his mom. There's the name. He has Norman Bates'd his mom. She is a mummy in a chair with her dentures still in. And I loved this because she looks at that mummy and she says, you were probably the worst kind of bitch. Because there is such a trend in serial killers having like terrible. Overbearing, abusive moms. Yeah. Oh, it's great.
So they're meandering and she ends up in this room. They still haven't seen him. They're being quiet and sneaky. And she's in this room and it's a room full of security cameras. And she sees Rowan. He's in a room looking around. And then she can see on the cameras Harvey,
the killer,
walking
like towards Rowan,
almost into that room. She panics and leaves to go and save him.
And shrieks his name.
Doesn't matter if she shrieked the name or not, though, because she walks out of that door into Harvey, into the Texas Chainsaw bitch.
Into the bottom of his boot. This man lifts his leg and kicks her in the face as she's at a dead run heading toward him around the door. Oh my God. So she passes out, obviously. And then when she comes to, it's like raining and she's on the ground and is she rolling down a hill? ? Like, what's going on? And then she gets picked up by the hair and Harvey is there. And Harvey's like, oh, I'm going to take care of you. I don't actually think he says anything.
No, he's dead silent.
Yeah. He pulls her by the hair and then he throws her into a root cellar that has no stairs. And she's not alone. There's a naked, dirty, sobbing woman.
Yeah, named Autumn. And also on top of all of this, Sloane's shoulder's dislocated, which is heinous. Yeah. Also, serial killer 101.
Yeah.
This is so stupid. She gets down there, and the first fucking thing she feels is her phone vibrate. Bro, take the phone. What are you doing?
Hey, Harvey, turns out you're real bad at this under pressure.
Like,
when you don't have all the time in the world to strip your victims down to nothing before you put them in the root cellar. Turns out you're not great.
Yeah, and so it's Rowan texting her like, Sloan, where are you? Answer me. Where are you? Where the fuck are you? And she's like, hey, I'm in the root cellar outside. There's a woman
I'm
here.
okay.
Like, what? And he says, hold tight,
on.
love.
Oh.
I'm coming.
And she can feel that phrase into her bones. She's like, it's probably just like an Irish saying, but he called me love. Like, what do I do? So he takes an axe to the doors, which doesn't help Autumn, the crying bitch. Woo! It just turns her right back up, you know?
Okay.
Sloan is nice enough to give her shirt.
Can I say, in a different book, this lady Autumn gets way too much page time. You know, in a different book, we find out her history. They have a chat. Like, we know that she's safe and sound after this. No, he busts that door open and like hauls her out of this root cellar.
Yeah,
like by the arm. And Autumn's like, "Don't leave me here." And he's like, "Shut the fuck up and be quiet." The door's open, so he's going to assume that you have ran away. And so you need to shut the fuck up, hide in a corner. I don't care that you're only wearing a shirt, and we'll deal with you later.
Yeah, we'll come back when it's done. But, like, he won't know you're here if you do not alert him to the fact that you're here. Shut up. And then they leave. And it's the best.
I love that because like I was literally thinking that this is so fucked up, but like I was thinking that I was like, man, we're gonna end up wasting so many fucking pages on this character that it doesn't matter about. And then it
turns out Brynn Weaver's a queen.
Brynn Weaver was like, oh yeah, she's fine. She has a shirt now.
Well, but also, I'm sorry, Brynn. I have so much respect for your work. But in addition to like all the DNA I feel like is impossible for your protagonists to clean up from every one of their crime scenes, especially later on when they like fuck in them. I also think that like Autumn's a big loose end. She's seen both their faces. She knows their accents. She knows everything about them that you can know just with your eyeballs and like sensory organs. You know what I mean?
Mel, are you saying that they should have killed Autumn?
No, I'm just saying they should have gotten on the same page with Autumn.
Hey,
like,
guess
we
what?
saved
Mel,
you.
No, Mel, the beauty of it, the beauty of the fact that we never see Autumn in this book again is that they had that conversation. My HBHQ canon is they had that conversation and fucking Autumn was like, you know what? You're right. Thank you so much. The police are like, where'd you get that shirt? We know that he strips his victims naked. And she's like, I blacked out.
And no, you can't have it to get the sweat off of it.
This is my shirt now.
It's my sweat, all of it. I don't care if there's two.
Honest to God, like I'm really not trying to poke fun or anything like that, but like,
okay.
Oh my God, if I was Autumn in this situation, and I would never feel safe in my own home ever again.
Oh God,
I would never leave my house. Oh no, I would only feel safe in my home, and I would never leave my house again. I would absolutely agoraphobia to the max.
Yeah.
2. That shirt would be my emotional support shirt. I would not I'd be like, that thing would be in shreds because I would cuddle
like
with
silky
that.
or like wubby. I don't know what those are called.
This is the reminder that like I'm okay.
Yeah, that I have overcome some shit. Yeah. I have seen the worst and I am here today is what that shirt would say to you.
But yeah, so, oh my God. So he pulls her into a barn, right? They're like running, sneaking across the yard, and he pulls her into the barn and like checks her over. Oh, listener, he checks her over and she's like, can you reset my shoulder? And he's like, no, we're going to have to see a doctor.
It might need surgery. Like, I'm not going to do that.
Then I was like, oh my God, we get Fionn again. I'm so excited. And so he like can't do that. And then he like feels up on her ribs and like she's like bruised, not feels up.
She keeps on saying, I'm fine. And she thinks he can only be truly comforted with checking her finger on top of bone.
Yeah.
Is what she says.
Now he is kneeling. He's kneeling on the ground and he's checked her over. And then he says, I'm sorry, and presses his forehead to her stomach and holds her around the thighs and just holds her to him.
And she's got her hands in his hair.
And she's like tracing her fingers through it and she's losing herself to the cadence of a simple touch repeated. The heat of his breath climbs from my navel, between my breasts, over my heart, following my surging pulse as Rowan slowly rises from his bent knee. And then she like slides her hands from his hair onto his face. Yeah. And so she's cupping, and then now he's cupping her face, and he like leans into her touch and like holds her hands to his face.
Yeah.
And he says,
I can't lose you. And she says, then you better kiss me. Finally!
Oh my God, they kiss! They kiss at this fucking barn! She's shirtless and bloody and bruised and almost broken.
One of her arms literally doesn't move right now.
Her urgency takes over. Rowan's hands thread into my hair and he crushes me to him. And like then he's like sucking her lip into his mouth. But he's still being so gentle because she's hurt. Yeah. And like her hand is like gripping the back of his neck and digging her nails in, and he's growling. Yes. And like, oh my God.
So hot. And she's like, I forget who we are. I forget where we are. I forget why we're here. And then in the background, she hears Autumn go, ah! Like it just
and obviously they stop.
Yeah. They pull apart. They see Autumn almost stark naked, just in that shirt, running around the corner through the barn. And they can hear the in the background because Harvey is right on her heels. And then he does the sexiest thing in the world. Tell them the sexiest thing. Tell them right now.
He grabs an axe and like walks over to the hiding spot. And she's like, what are you doing? Yeah. And he rests the handle of the axe on his shoulder and huffs and then winks at her. And he says, getting revenge for hurting my girl, of course. Sir.
Come on.
Put it away. Now is not the time. But also, like, it's definitely the time. Keep coming. Keep going.
Always the time.
All right, listener. This is the end of today.
Yeah. And then we will be back in the next episode with the rest of the book. But don't worry, you don't have to wait too long. It's going to be fine. We love you. We would never do that to you anymore. We have done that to you. We're done with that, though.
We would never. We have done it a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
See you tomorrow.
Bye. Heaving Bosoms is produced by us, Melody Carlisle and Sabrina Bradley. Editing is done by me, Melody Carlisle. Our theme music is by the incredible singer-songwriter Brittany Fonts, and our art is by the ultra-talented author Kate Pryor. She has a release that just came out. It's called Mated to My Ex, and it is a second chance divorced werewolf romance that I'm so excited about. If you like our show, remember to follow us on your favorite podcast app, rate us 5 stars, and leave a review. And of course, tell all your friends about us. Even if they don't read romance, like, we're hilarious. If you want to get in touch about advertising or anything else, you can email us at heavingbosoms.podcast@gmail.com. And if you want more of us, visit patreon.com/heavingbosomspodcast. You can also find us on Instagram at Heaving Bosoms, on TikTok at Heaving_Bosoms, and in our Facebook group, the Heaving Bosoms Geriatric Friendship Cult. You can sign up for our newsletter and get our Reading Embrace printable by going to heavingbosoms.com. All right, I'll see you tomorrow with the second part. Bye.